Thank you, Jim. Good evening, everyone. I'd like to have us stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. All right. You all set, Karen?
I got my initials.
You got your initials? Okay. So you've got attendance?
Well, everybody's got to say that I got to.
Please.
Lisa Lysigian,
Here.
David Abear,
Here.
Paul Gagnon,
Here.
Mike Gendro,
Here.
Al Stewart,
Yeah.
Ken Stanvic,
Here.
Christine Kamal,
Here.
Kara Cubit,
Here.
Karen McKay here, Scott Bowden absent.
Full house.
I know, I can't believe it.
Joe brings a crowd. All right, we have one item on the agenda this evening. It's map 22, lot 8, 85-1, 579 Bridge Street, discussion of plantings. And I'd like to remind everyone that this is what the format is tonight, and that we'll review the questions that we had asked Joe to answer for this month. That was pretty well outlined on the handout that he has. Please state your name.
Sure. My name's Joe Maynard. I'm with Benchmark LLC. Beside me here is Bill Reno of Reno Homes. I think Bill wants to start off.
Good evening, everyone. Bill Reno again, Reno Companies. Just wanted to, again, kind of thank everybody, right? I think this is our 5th time getting together. So, kind of excuse us if we repeat ourselves a little bit, but just trying to kind of summarize everything. When we originally met, I think Joe came in here the first time, and then we all met on site the second time. I think we've made a lot of improvements since that first site meeting. A few times we kind of said, hey, you guys are asking for a lot, but what are we getting in return? I kind of just wanted to summarize that and, again, let Joe go through with the rest of his answers of all the questions. But, I really just want to reiterate that we eliminated a huge dredge and fill by purchasing some additional land kind of on the suggestion of this board. Last meeting, we presented our plan, which, a very dense, diverse planting plan, which, again, I think we really tried to go above and beyond to, to make the board happy and, again, show them what kind of development we can bring. Also, Joe has a few extra things I think that we were able to do to kind of get closer, I think, to a happy medium for everybody. So, as Joe goes through all his questions, I'd love everybody to try to kind of keep an open mind. Remember that, listen, by nature, right, we're development and conservation is always going to be kind of split. So I just want to remind everybody of how far we're truly trying to go, to gain the approval of the board. With that said, again, I appreciate the time, and we'll let Joe get into it.
And I assume that you're talking about the meeting tonight and the agenda item of reviewing planting.
Correct.
Thank you.
All right. So at our last meeting, the first thing we started to talk about, there were questions about whether the proposed plantings were native. We reached out to Bill's landscape architect. He wrote a letter explaining that everything that he's proposed to be planted is a native species except for a few ornamental trees that they're proposing up near the building. So anything that's along the buffer that we're replanting or any of the other majority of the plantings within the project are all things that are native to this area. He also talks about salt-tolerant plants, and he talks about the maintenance of the buffer plantings especially. He talks about how it'll just be the weeding of invasive plants only. Volunteer native plantings will remain and encouraged to thrive. So in general, everything that he's put in that buffer area is something that's a good thing for that area. Another question that came up out of this is whether we're going to have some sort of education for the snowplow operators. The Green Snow Pro Management certified contractor, we added some notes to the plans that that's what will be utilized for the plow maintenance of the property through the winter. The other thing the landscape architect did is he modified the plantings, as you can see from the plan, to give us some ability to not plow over some vegetation as we're pushing snow into our storage areas. Primarily, the biggest snow storage area is proposed at the detention pond. As I stated, we talked to Alteration of Terrain about that area, and they're fine with us keeping snow in that section. The comment did come out of the board is the capacity of that pond. By nature, as we finish the drainage design of this, that pond is about 25 to 30% bigger than it needs to be. So I feel that's enough capacity for any of the snow storage that might occur within that area. Another point I want to make is as the final design was done, we were able to shave some of that grading that we had in the buffer. So I think we had 27,100 the last time we talked to you. We were able to get that down to a 26,000 square foot disturbance in the WCD. Of that area, 16,000 is a temporary disturbance, which we're replanting the entire area of, and about 10,000 of it is for the road. The last question the board kind of asked us about was about mitigation for the WCD impacts. I spent a lot of time talking to Bill about this. I talked to my wetland scientist about this. She seemed to think this was kind of unprecedented for this type of an impact, but Bill wants to kind of work with the board, so we've come up with an option, I guess. So being that we don't know when or if anything would ever be developed in the back, we'd be looking to grant like a 2-acre area within the back area under what we'd call a floating easement. So it'd get written into the deed for the property that at any given time, a minimum of 2 acres outside of existing WCD areas would be maintained as an open space or conservation area. But I'm reluctant to pin down where that is until I know someday down the future, or somebody else knows down the future, because if I put it in one spot, it's always going to be that spot that I need for something in the future, right? And so then we're going to be trying to get that restriction lifted. But we could put it into the deed language, and therefore, any time a plan comes in for that backside, if it 50 years from now, 70 years from now, 100 years from now, that restriction would still be held on that. So, and until that time, the area just stays vegetated the way it is. So, if there's something I'm missing from the comments that came up in the prior meeting, just let me know. I thought I got everything as I went through my notes from the last meeting, and we can answer any questions that you might have.
The only thing that I can remember is we had talked about minimizing salt.
So we talked about that from the standpoint of the Green Snow Pro certified contractors. They use, it's a program to the state, and primarily it's my understanding from this is that it's a minimizing of salt. They have certain amount they apply based upon the temperature range and stuff so that they're not over salting the area. The other point just to be made is that all of the runoff from the building and the parking areas and a closed drainage system is sent to that detention pond. One point I want to make out about the detention pond is because of the soils on this site, it's a very well-drained soil, right? So the permeability of the soil or the woods that are there is pretty extreme. So the detention pond design in a 2-year storm, we have no output from that. And we actually end up with a decrease in every storm event from the property because of the way we've set up this drainage design. So from a salt perspective, we're looking to manage that by the contractor and then the education that they'll have for that purpose. And then the drainage measures are all to send it to that detention pond area. So we're primarily, the big detention pond area is the bulk of the drainage.
Okay. All right. Any questions from the board?
Can
Ken?
they go over what exactly they've changed
As
over
soon
there?
as Ken is done? Go ahead.
Oh, sorry.
Question, how did you figure the 25, I think you said 25% more capacity than you need in it? How did you calculate that?
So the pond is, we calculate a pre-development amount of runoff from the site, which is actually very little because most of it infiltrates into the ground. So the pond design itself, when we changed the runoff coefficient from the sandy soils to a paved surface, it increases the runoff coefficient. So we calculated the amount of flows that are going to that detention pond, and it comes up with a volume that we need in order to make that work. So that detention pond is 25% bigger than it needs to be.
Okay, how did you figure in, you also want to store snow in that detention pond,
Yep.
correct? How did you figure out that added volume, if you will, based on what average snowfall for how many years or whatever? How'd you come up with that?
Snow is just a random number every year. We all know it's never
You
calculated,
do, but how
right?
did you calculate that? You're coming up with 25% more
Well,
capacity.
what he's saying is it's 25% larger than
Than
what
it
the
needs
state
to be.
regulations need to be,
Or the
just
town's
for that
regulations.
site, or the
For
town.
water, not
Correct.
not for snow. You're using it as a snow farm, I'll call it.
Correct, but so for example, if all that snow was never plowed and left on the asphalt, when that snow melts, because of the drainage, it's all 100% going to that retention pond. So we're really not putting any extra liquid
It's just the
into that
solids would stay
pond.
there
It's just
until
going
it
in there
melts.
quicker before it melts. So by him saying it's 25%
You
larger,
assume that every molecule of water that is across the property is going to find its way into that detention pond. I would agree with you.
well,
I would
asphalt,
assume it's not.
well, listen, there's always going to be a buffer somewhere, correct?
Right.
But on asphalt, yes. I mean, the whole plan is for it, so, again, I don't have a percentage, some of it's going to evaporate, sun, all that kind of stuff, and obviously some of it is going
So I'm
to,
just trying to get a number
Yeah,
as to how you get to that.
there's no
25.
way for me to quantify snowfall and storage. There just isn't a number to be able to calculate that.
Okay, 'cause
I
I'm
can
not-
calculate the rain because there's
It may
published
be my
numbers on that.
ignorance, but I've not had, since I've been here, I really have only have one other occurrence where somebody said, I'm going to store snow on top of my detention or retention pond. And I was never really sure how that calculation of that added load comes into play.
Yeah, there's no measure, and honestly, our rainfall events that the state and the federal government use for this include snowfall. So, that's just a rain event that's in a solid form, right? So the averages that the federal government uses for the rainfall events, they just got updated about 5 years ago. They almost doubled in some of the storm events. And so the pond itself, we can easily calculate what that total flow is based upon 2-year storm, 10-year storm, based upon how many inches of rain those produce. And the quantity of volume that we need to store in that pond, first off, whenever we do a pond without snow, just as a pond itself, there's always a buffer. So whatever we calculate the highest level of the water that compounds or stays in the pond, there's always a foot
So
of
what would that
freeboard.
buffer be, take away the snow? Just-
It's a foot. It's a foot
and what
of
percentage?
elevation.
What percentage, just so I could,
It's probably at 15%.
so
of
you're
the
already
pond's
at 15, just plain water, right?
just plain water.
Okay, now you're going to throw snow on top of that, right?
Well, this pond itself, the basic pond, without the 25% that I'm talking about, the 25% is on top of that 15% we just talked about.
So you're looking at 35 excess, is that what you're saying?
Yeah, pretty much, that's the end result, is there's probably about 35% excess capacity that pond can handle.
Thank you.
Okay, Karen?
Oh, I just didn't know, I mean, did you change anything on the plan, or did you want to
We-
show us, like, what you did
Yes.
from last time? That's all I'm,
Right, so primarily, the biggest change on the planting side of things was when you look at the detention pond, right when you come in off of the driveway on the right-hand side, we had trees, or the landscape architect had planted vegetation straight across there, and the comment that came out of the board was, how are you gonna plow between the trees? So we talked to the landscape architect about leaving some gaps in the vegetation so that snow could be plowed in that direction. So he actually created 2 spots for that. He has the one at the detention pond, and he has one at the southeast corner of the property. There's a triangular area in there, and therefore, that area would also be used.
also the more evergreens.
Yeah. The other comment that came out from the board was about evergreen plantings up against our one residential abutter. So the plan changed in there, and you can see on the diagram I gave you that there's a lot more smaller circular areas in there, and those are all evergreen plantings that he proposed in that area up against that residential abutter that we've been working with for this project.
I believe, Karen, it was you that brought up too, that he kind of phased them out just a little bit on the left and the right. That way it's just not such an abrupt stop of the evergreen screening.
Up against
So again, just to make it look a little bit more natural up against the abutter.
Yeah, yeah, that's all I wanted to know, just what's changed.
Okay, Dave?
Question I have is, when you have the snow or any waters that are going into that retention pond, what type of filtration do you have to keep the soils and everything in that area, clean?
Well, it's a sand bottom type of design. It's strictly an infiltration pond, so that water won't sit in that pond for more than 24 hours. It should infiltrate. That's the calculations we do to say that it'll stay in there and it'll infiltrate back into the ground within a 24-hour period.
So we are bringing in materials. There is like regulated materials, the quality of sand and stuff, and the depth of the sand to the
There are
bottom.
some specifications on the sand, but from the test pits on site, from the soil scientists testing on the property and all that, most of the soils on this are very similar to the center of town. They're deep water tables, they're sand, coarse sand type of soils, and that's the type of material that'll be used in the bottom of the detention pond.
The whole point is almost like a natural filtration, right? Kind of what would happen if nothing was ever there. So that sand will grab any solids, the plant is salt, it doesn't dissolve, that type of stuff. Water goes straight down as it normally would if we were never there.
And there's also an operation and maintenance schedule for that that's incorporated. Pelham makes this incorporated as part of the approval, and it's also part of all of the alteration of terrain application and the drainage report that gets reviewed by the town.
My concern would be that I would just want to make sure that, the filtration is really tight, because I've been involved with properties before, and if it's not tight and you're not having it filter correctly, you can have some serious problems.
Agreed. So I think that's part of the thing, again, with us, with the low salt and the green plow program, and in this, again, where we get educated in our maintenance staff and stuff, so we're salting correctly. And again, there is a maintenance program that we'll be following for that. But no, I agree with you. So every now and then, some fresh sand, or again, I don't know exactly how it goes.
Yeah, there's primarily there's inspection processes for that. There's a catch basin cleanout schedule that's associated with everything to get sediment out of the basins. Again, the bottom of that pond, it's really just a sand base. They rake them. We don't plant them anymore. A study was done by UNH that by planting them, what actually happens is that the plants just get out of control. Nobody maintains them. But they found that there was no difference with the plantings or if it was just left as a sand bottom. So we just do them as infiltration ponds now. So.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Yes, Christine.
Forgive me, Al.
No, they opened it up.
Okay. I just want to remind people why we're here. The Conservation Commission's responsibilities are to oversee the proper utilization and protection of our natural resources. So with that said, I can't overlook the fact that I really believe that this project is too big for the 5 acres that's being proposed to be built on. And with that said, I look back at a plan that you had sent or had passed out to us. The date on it is September 29th, 2020. And you delineate very poorly drained soils. And I also noted that the limits of the Wetland Conservation District go right through Charles Way And even though the front part, you moved out of the wetland area, the limits of the Wetland Conservation District go all the way up through the west side, I would say that is. And even that limit of it, you have the septics there, the EDAs, in those areas as well. I'm very concerned about that. I'm also going to reiterate, I'm going to reiterate, and I'll even hand these out because I was advised to do that, so you can take a look at that. I didn't realize there was going to be that many. And I'm going to recite this. Here you go.
I think I have that from last time.
So, per the state, you have to have contiguous receiving layer of soil. And that is for the lot size. It is going to be a minimum of 20 contiguous. And the following areas should not be included as available land when calculating minimum lot size, even though the lot's boundaries might include these areas, which is very poorly drained soils. We also have that in our land use regulations, and where we say minimum contiguous building land area requirement, it has to be 35, 55, or it was 100, what did I see that, 217,000 contiguous square feet. And that's the reason for that is because you're talking about putting 130 bedrooms with, I think I saw 10, is it 10 EDAs?
I think it's 10.
10 EDAs. That would be a lot of affluent going, that's right up against the right up against the Wetland Conservation District. So if I were going to be advising on this, I'm not sure if I would be today, but I would say no to this project. It's too big. Based on my calculations, even you referred to this at a meeting, saying that the first 10 bedrooms, you need 3 acres, and then you get 10,000 for every
Another bedroom.
One bedroom per
Right.
10,000.
But it clearly states in our land use and our zoning ordinance and with the state that you can't include the wetland area. Very poorly drained soils can't be included. Poorly drained, you can incorporate in your,
Didn't you
excuse me,
and say the opposite in the board meeting, yeah?
very poorly drained can't be included, and that's a large portion of this lot. And I just,
So,
Yeah.
all right, so at the last meeting, you said you talked to Travis Guest up DES, and you talked to Eric Thomas.
Yes.
I called both of them, okay? And they said, yep, we talked to her. And Travis said to me that, Joe, you're interpreting this correctly. And I said, I figured as much, because I've been doing this a long time. I agree with you from the standpoint, I can't count the very poorly drained soils, and I'm not in the calculations that we're using for the number of sewage loading that's associated with the project. The state rule doesn't say that it all has to be contiguous upland soils. It just says you use the soils that are within your lot area.
no, actually, I'm going to read this right here. New Hampshire Code of Administrative Rules. In all cases, the lot shall contain a minimum of 20 contiguous square feet.
It does.
20,000, right?
Yep.
Yeah, which we have,
Right.
multiple times.
Contiguous,
Multiple
but the
different
answer is, but what cannot be included? And they have to be touching, so you can't include that 10 acres up
parcels. No, the
top.
20,000 has to be contiguous, a minimum
Right.
of 20,000.
So with that said, you have 5 acres to build on.
Mm-hmm.
And that's 19,500 gallons per day that you'll be using.
19,600, I think it was, but yeah.
Okay. And if you divide that by the formula, divide it by 2,000, and then you multiply it by the soil factor, and I did the best soil, you would need 9.75 acres of land to build, and that would only be 18 bedrooms.
And again, you and I are going to forever disagree on this.
I just want to, so
and-
with that said, I just want you to know where I'm stuck.
We're aware, I mean,
I'm
this
aware
is
of
the
it.
third time we've had like the
Right.
exact
Yeah.
discussion. And the state makes the final, Keach, when it gets sent out, makes the final decision on it, and the state makes the final decision. We've had these conversations with the planning board. I mean, it's been hashed out a lot of times, right? So I guess when I said at the beginning too, like, we're trying to, I don't know how to say it, but I mean, the septic loading is not my personal purview, right? Not in this board's purview. It's handled by the state and by the third-party engineer that the town hires. You know, we're trying to kind of meet in the middle and give you guys as much as we can, but if we keep going back and forth about the septic loading, which we're seeing it differently, everybody we discuss is seeing it our way. I mean, we're not moving forward this far just on a whim and a prayer. And we keep
Right.
going
Well,
backwards and backwards and backwards, you know?
Again, this is on a very large area of wetland, and it's actually, a little portion of that, actually half of the portion of the property is over the aquifer district.
Well, I mean, we've gone
I
over
know,
that multiple times too, and to be honest, we're literally on the line and there's no guarantee that we're over it. The town dump is on it. There's a lot on it, almost the entire town is on it. So again, to bring back the aquifer, when we're sitting on the edge, if even on it, and our drainage and everything we're doing is far better than any of the other properties that are already on it, it's extremely unfair to tell us that to bring the aquifer back up and say we have anything to do with it.
I'm just talking about the septic loading, and again, I just want to reiterate, just want to protect the wetlands. Want to protect the wetlands.
Which we are. And we're doing our absolute best to compromise with everything, but we can't keep going back to septic loading that is not, that is judged by someone else.
And I want to point out, there's other things you look at besides loading, right? There's nitrate setbacks, we meet all our nitrate setbacks. I'm using a pre-treatment type of system, so you can't ask for any better quality of water coming out of these septic systems than what we're proposing as part of this plan, so.
Don't you have to be 500 feet based on the size of the septic areas?
You know, you're looking at 500 feet if I put it as one community septic system. The way I've done it, I've broken it up into smaller septic systems. And the way the nitrates work is there's a side uphill and downhill setback
Right,
associated with that. So every one of these systems, none of those nitrate setbacks overlap. They all meet the state's guidelines for nitrate setbacks.
But it's all being pumped through.
It's being pumped through different ones, but there's a time dose, right? So we're only sending, if this system is, some of the systems out here are designed for 999 gallons per day. Some of the systems out here are 1,300, some are 1,600. So we set up the dosing chambers for these systems so that it's a time thing. So the pump will kick on for 3 minutes for this one so that it sends that many gallons to that system. And then what happens is the next time the pump cycle kicks on, it'll send 999 gallons to another system, which gives that first system a chance to do its work.
But the effluent has to go somewhere,
The effluent goes down, it goes into the ground at some point.
and which is right near the
and-
Wetland Conservation District. And that's, again, that's, my biggest concern is about how much septic will be in the effluent going in the Wetland Conservation District.
And we're meeting all of those regulations. We're meeting all
All
of
right,
them. or
Paul has
exceeding.
one.
So-
Let me just try to make two comments. First of all, obviously Christine's done a lot more homework than I have, but just from a logical perspective, the fact that you can take 15 acres over here and use it to calculate how many bedrooms you can have, and then dump all the storage load over here onto a tiny piece of property, just logically makes no sense. With that said, why don't we try something? Why don't you get the state permit?
So,
Get the approval, wait a minute, can I finish, please, Joe? And get the approval from Steve Keach and come back. Because then maybe you would get Christine's vote, and maybe you would get my vote. Fundamentally, we all think this makes no sense. And if the state laws allow this, shame on the state. You must admit, Joe, what if you had 100 acres and 1 acre was over here, and you used the other 99 to calculate the load factor, and then you put it all on 1 acre? I mean, it just doesn't make sense to pack all this storage on a little tiny area, but use all this other area to make the calculation.
Well, it's not-
It's probably a mistake, and maybe you're right. I mean,
No,
you're
it-
usually right, so I'm going to give you the benefit of the doubt. But if you're so confident, go get the permit and come back to us saying, here's the permit from the state, stop talking about this darn septic loading stuff, get out of here, and let's talk about plantings and mitigation, and we would get this off the board.
so here's the thing, right? So I've designed all the systems, they're all part of the application package that when it's going to the planning board. When I submit septics to the state and you have an alteration of terrain permit, DES for septic won't approve it until the alteration of terrain permit is approved. Alteration of terrain won't approve it until Keach has all done his formal review of this, and I don't want to get a full formal review from Keach until I know I'm all set with the planning board, right? So,
We agree with that. So get approval from the planning board, which would be a big issue, because it's really, as you said, it's the planning board's issue on septic.
Correct.
We're
Yeah, and we've discussed it in depth
Well,
with them,
but,
yeah.
but so far you haven't got their approval. Get the
Well, on the
planning
se-
board's
on the septic
approval.
we have.
Get the Keach approval, get the state approval, and then come back to us. It's gonna be it's gonna be easier conversation if we're not stressing over this stuff.
so my only thing about that whole process is that I go to planning board says, what does conservation say, right? So I'm
Tell
gonna
them
go,
we said.
come back again.
They know what we said.
I'm
Oh, no,
going in
there's no-
circles.
No,
you
no,
know?
you're not. You're gonna go to
I mean, it's not
planning
the-
strictly for approval of the septic design. That's all we're asking. Go to planning to get approval of septic design, get Keach to approve it, get the state to approve it.
I mean,
and
that's
then
just
say,
not-
okay, we got this clear. Now, we
Hang
can
on.
talk about plantings and
No, go ahead.
we can talk about mitigation. But Christine is pointing things out that sound logical to me, and she quotes the state law that says it's got to be contiguous, and she shows the town ordinance that say it's got to be contiguous. Why do we even write
But
these
it's
things and say
20,000 of
contiguous?
contiguous, 20,000, which we
Right.
have.
But what I'm trying to say.
Okay,
can I-
we can-
Can I just say one thing? I have a question.
One thing, go ahead.
Question. Aren't there setbacks from the Wetland Conservation District? There are.
Sure.
What are they?
50 feet.
That's what I thought. Okay. How
Well,
is it okay
50 feet back from the wetland,
from the,
not back from the Wetland Conservation District.
No, the Wetland Conservation District is 50 feet wide back from the wetland,
right,
defined by the soil scientist.
okay. And you can have an EDA right up to that.
Yes.
Okay.
Not
I haven't heard
Sure.
one. My suggestion isn't workable, though.
Well, it's a timing issue, right?
Okay.
From our standpoint, because it'll take me, by the time I do, like, I'm trying to get the planning board to accept the plan and send it to Keach for some form of review, right? So I'm trying to do that now. With the holidays and everything else, Mr. Keach goes away in January. It's going to take me a month to 6 weeks to get his review back, right? So my goal was, I'm going to planning board, ask for them so I can get this going. I'm going next week, actually, to do that part of it. The plan will go to Keach. I wouldn't be back to that board until February sometime, is how it kind of works. The it's a timing issue, right? So if I go to the planning board and they say, what does conservation say? I go, so we're still haggling over buffer impacts and mitigation, and they're gonna say, why? And I'm gonna say this, and they'll say, I need to get this approved before I go
Correct.
back to them. So,
Correct.
you know, I'm dragging this, like, I just keep kicking the can down the road is what it ultimately ends up being.
I don't think timing is going
hang
to
on.
weigh a lot.
No, it's-
And we're not trying to give you a hard time, it's just that
No, no.
Christine's done all
but
kinds
this-
of research.
I don't know
and-
how else to say, it's not in the purview of the board, right? So
Well,
that's
it
the
is
hard part.
From your, you know, I understand where you're coming from, it's a septic system, you feel it might impact the wetland. I understand that 100%.
And it's covered with impervious, so it's obviously got nowhere to go but into the wetland. And you've said the soils are permeable,
The
so it's
soils are
gonna,
very
it's gonna
permeable.
go right into the wetland.
Well, it's a,
If it were distributed on 20 acres that you used to calculate it, then we'd say, oh, okay, it's distributed over 20
But
acres,
you
but it's
understand
distributed
that-
over 5.
if someone was to do that, right, it's like, I choose to do smaller systems, okay, that's just my preference, right? If I had the back and I wanted to do one big system, okay, what's the difference if I build one big system and I'm doing a point discharge at that
The
location for the
difference is, as
septic?
you already said, you'd have to be 500 feet from the wetland.
Well, I
Here
don't-
you're doing little ones, but they're touching the WCD, not 5. If it were 500 feet away, none of us would be talking about
and
this.
here's
It's
the
not
diff-
5 feet away.
But we'd have to, but then also we'd be dredging and filling through the
The
wetland,
wetland to
which
get to
we're
the other
not.
side, right?
Yeah,
Now,
So the
and that's a
whole
good
zoning-
point, and I acknowledge your point. You make good points, and you're being very rational with us.
Trying,
And I
yeah.
appreciate your cool-headedness. I really do. Not everybody is that.
and all I want to say is,
Discuss. You had a nice conversation on the site walk. This is the third time in front of us. So I appreciate that. I really do. But I can't ignore what a member of the board is saying it says in our regulations.
But
That's where I have a
the hard
problem.
part is that's not,
that's,
so she's talking about zoning, which is amount of bedrooms allowed for Pelham. the fact that we're using 31 acres for our bedroom count is completely irrelevant to septic loading. They are two blatantly different things. The septic loading
I understand
is,
that.
is figured by the state, which we meet all, I mean, do you think I'm spending this kind of time and money and come in front of the board 5 times for conservation?
Well,
When-
4,
when-
but who's counting?
Well, Joe, I'm sorry,
there
Joe,
was 5.
Joe
We did a
5,
walk.
and Joe 5 and me.
Just
4.
kidding,
Okay.
I
just
just
kidding.
want to
No, no, no.
defend myself here. I'm telling you that I spoke to 3 engineers. I didn't get the third one's last name, but I promise you, I was referred to the code, the New Hampshire code, which, and I asked specifically, does this include multi-unit, multi-apartments? And I was told yes. And then I said, would you write something to support that? And they said, well, we don't have, the gentleman said, I don't think that's necessary, we don't do that, all you have to do is make photocopies of that code. And that's what I did, and I'm presenting that. And based on what I just read, which is what he told me to give you, he referred me to F, and this is what he said. This is what it says on F. The following areas should not be included as available land when calculating the minimum lot size, even though the lot's boundaries might include these areas. And number 2 says very poorly drained soils.
So
And
wait a
that's all I'm
minute.
gonna say.
So there's 2 things. You're reading here, you're saying would satisfy the minimum lot size. I'm not trying to satisfy a minimum lot size with this. I'm trying to satisfy the minimum allowable sewage loading. They're 2 different things.
This was under the septic.
Yeah, it does matter. It's subdivision. So Subsurface Bureau handles both subdivision and septic systems. It's the same department. Their ENVWQ 1000 incorporates both subdivision rules, and it also involves septic system rules and regulations. So up until ENVWQ 1004, it deals with lot size. Those are the beginning section of it. You get into the back section past 100804, 1009, those deal with the septic system side of things in the regulation.
Okay, can I just read this from, if you don't?
Just tell me what section of it is you're reading from?
Okay, it's in the zoning ordinance.
It's in your zoning
It's-
ordinance, okay.
Okay, and I know you made reference to this in a past meeting, that you're a multifamily dwelling, you get minimum lot size is 130,680 square feet, right? And then you get an additional 10,000 for every additional 10,000 square feet, you get a bedroom in excess of 10, right? So you get 10 for the first 3 acres. Okay.
Yep.
And then it says, and so that was table 1, and so far we're on the same page. Then you go to 307-13, additional lot size and street access requirements. And it says, in addition to meeting the minimum lot size per that table, area requirements of section 307-12 of Pelham zoning ordinance, every new single-family lot approved by the planning board or after the effective date, I have to read the whole thing, shall contain 35 contiguous square feet of non-wetland area. Every new 2-family approved by the planning board shall contain 55 contiguous, and then every workforce, housing, parent lot, residential district should contain 217,800 contiguous square feet of non-wetlands. And then it says the following land should not be counted in the computation of those minimum contiguous square feet of non-wetland requirements. And it says land areas containing poorly or very poorly drained soils. That's why I'm saying those 14 acres or 15 acres, you got to take that out of your calculation.
But see, you're misinterpreting your own ordinance. So your ordinance, when you start, it talks about new single-family and duplex lots, right? That's what it says under that 307-13. There's a separate section above that in the table that talks about minimum lot size and how you calculate number of bedrooms allowed for multifamily, but multifamily is not the creation of new single-family house lots or duplex lots.
Can I just say, even if I just went by just what you just said?
Yep.
Okay, just what and I did the
Okay,
math on that.
you got your one in.
I just did the math on it.
I understand, totally, but Ken has a question.
Oh,
Allow
I
him
just,
to at least
I
speak.
just have a suggestion. I think Paul's made a very, very good suggestion in terms of how to proceed. We seem to be at a loggerhead. I hear, this side's saying this side's saying that. Paul suggested, hey, let's go through this process and then come back to us, because what we're really getting into is not really our, I'll say, expertise, if you will, okay? We can do that, okay, without making a recommendation, and that could happen, Or you can force it to the point where you say, I want a recommendation out of the Conservation Commission, and what I'm feeling is if I had to do it right now, I would be opposed to making a positive recommendation.
Which is fair.
So,
Okay, let's not forget why we're here.
Yeah. Al, do you mind if I have a suggestion?
No, I want mine for a minute.
No, that's fine.
We're talking about planting. Okay, now, just before I get started, does anybody have an easy question?
Oh, my God, are you serious?
Okay.
About plantings or in general?
Plantings.
No, I know that there are some plants on this list that are not native, but it does say on your, your letter here that the non-natives are outside of the WCD. So I just want,
Yep.
I can't actually see these tiny little, I've been trying to figure out, that's a non-native, can I see it in there? I can't actually see it. But, so I just want to, I assume you're a person here, they signed it and all that, so that's great, and I appreciate that, because I was the one that brought that up.
Yeah, no. It's
So as far
a
as
fair point.
plantings, that's
Okay.
my own comment.
Joe, this is my question. As I had asked you in meeting 3, do you have some number of the impermeable surface on those 5 acres? And since you've defined what's necessary to have for a infiltration pool, I assume by calculating the rainfall and the impermeable surface, you should have a volume of that pool. My real question is, what is the elevation of the bottom of the infiltration pond?
So the bottom of the infiltration pond is 3 feet above the water table. It's almost 4 feet above the wetland elevation. And the only reason it's 3 feet above is because the machine we had doing the test pits, I couldn't get it to go any deeper. Or I would have probably seen the water table another foot or so deeper. So
Okay, so it's 4 feet above the wetland,
easily 4 feet above the wetland.
because the outflow will be directly into the wetland, because that's how it's piped.
Well, the pond itself, there's the outlet structure, the pond will hold the water for, especially in a 2-year storm event, because the way the alteration of terrain rules read, we can have 0 increase in rate of runoff in a 2-year storm event. So 2-year storms are captured completely on site, and there's no water coming out of that pipe in a 2-year storm.
And the volume of that pond is, do you have that number?
I don't, and I can text Nick.
Okay.
But it's.
So the 35% extra is above and beyond the volume necessary to support the 2-year storm.
It's actually, it's 35% bigger to handle a 50-year storm, so
Right,
it's even
but
bigger.
you calculate on 2 years.
Well, we do 2, 10, 25, and 50. We do all storm events for those, for alteration of terrain.
So what is the requirement
On
of
your
the
storm,
pond? For 2 years or for 50 years?
I think Pelham is only 25-year. In the back of my head, I think you guys look at it from a 25.
And this is what allows you to have the 35% extra? Or is that just a safety margin from engineering expertise?
No, so the 1 foot of freeboard is the minimum requirement to have the buffer with any of the storm events in the detention pond. But the pond is 25% bigger than even that requirement.
Okay. Do you have some idea of the distance between the outflow and the wetland? It's going to go under the road?
It goes under the road. It actually, there's a basin in between, so it goes from the pond to a structure, because we needed to get cover over the pipe. Something in my head tells me it's about a 100-foot run of piping from the pond out to where it discharges on the other side of the road. So,
Okay. No, my total concern was that that entire 5 acres is nearly covered. With a 2-year storm, it's going to generate a significant amount of water. And so that should be a readily available number.
yeah, I'm just he was he was calling me this afternoon with the volumes, but I just don't remember what they were from the conversation. But I do know that when we design these ponds, we look at all storm events. In every storm event that goes to that pond, there has to be a minimum of 1 foot of freeboard, meaning additional 1 foot of capacity, just to meet the regulatory stuff. So in a 50-year storm in this pond, it still has a foot of buffer to that, and the pond is still 25% bigger than it needs to be for that storm event.
And how, do you have some idea of how deep?
That pond is about 6 feet deep.
6 feet?
Yep.
All right. Is there any other questions on plantings?
Can I follow up with a question on your detention pond?
Sure.
Oh, it looks like on the drawing that the outlet and the infiltration, or we've been calling it infiltration pond, detention pond, all kinds of things. It looks like it's at the bottom in the drawing. Is that true?
So,
It looks like it's at 142, which looks like it's at the bottom. But
yes. Well, and again, there's another plan I didn't bring that is outlet structure. It's a weir type of structure, so it's a circular basin. There's a slotted weir in the side of it. That weir is a foot off the bottom so that it traps sediment within the pond still.
Okay.
Yeah, so it doesn't, the water doesn't go,
It doesn't- it's
pool
not
at the
just
bottom
a
and then go right out.
Right, it's not a pipe at the bottom.
Yeah, it's not
of
a-
the
it's not an
water.
opening.
It
It's not like a
has-
tub drain.
It has a riser. and
It
then
is a structure, it's just like a catch basin, but in the side of it, I think it's a 1-inch weir to a 2-inch weir is what it ended up being.
Yeah, so still, like you said, the water would have to rise 5 feet, even though the structure starts in the middle, the water would have to rise before it goes into the
Oh,
structure.
okay.
Yeah.
That's, all right, so that little circle in this drawing is just like
It's the
that-
location, not necessarily
That's
the
the
height.
standpipe, yep.
Got it, thank you.
I had a question on the same thing. So, the pond you put out, it's 25% bigger, it's 35% bigger, there's 10% of this, there's what?
So the basic
How-
pond design, because of the buffer that's they make us put in the design, it's about 10 to 15% bigger because of the buffer that they make us design for. But above that buffer, the pond is still 25% bigger than that,
So it is 40% bigger than
what it needs to be.
what it needs to be. 25% bigger than what, let's just say, code regulations are. Regulations force it to be, so let's call it 0 is 15% bigger than what they ever anticipate. And we're 25% over that.
So the regulations require you to they say the pond needs to be 100 feet, but you have to also make it 110 feet, or
For
whatever.
lack of a better, yes,
Yeah.
correct.
Yep, we have to
So
have.
why don't they just say you need it to be 100, and, you know?
Well, we
like-
made it even bigger because a comment came out of the board the last time about if snow was in there, what kind of capacity would you lose? So we said when we did the design, I was going to make it as big as I possibly could fit and still have it function in the manner it needs, but have extra capacity, because if we're using it for snow storage, I didn't want it to be said that snow storage is going to displace the water that needed to be there to begin with, so we oversized this for that
So that's
measure.
why you oversized it, because we mentioned snow storage.
You asked me about that and what would happen if snow was in it.
So what about, if you put the snow in it, what if it all, like, freezes? Like, I mean, a few winters ago, we had a winter, it was 7 degrees for like 6 weeks. That was the high. It never got above 7 degrees. So if this ice and snow all freezes in there, how does the water
So if there
be
was
able
water,
to
that would be,
infiltrate on frozen?
Well, again, frozen ground is not going to infiltrate through, but it'll still store the water within the capacity of the pond.
and then as it all melts, that's when more water's coming, so it's all going down. I
Okay.
mean, listen, I hear you, it's science that's above my head as well, but,
Yeah, I just feel like the water could be freezing, I mean, the snow could be freezing on like outlet structures and stuff like that, and you can't,
I mean, yeah, that's,
where's it gonna
that's
go?
every,
It's
that's
gonna go
every,
somewhere.
Well, and again, with any of the standpipes that get put in, there's always an emergency spillway across the top of them. So typically, we set the structure, there's a slot in the side of it that the water as it fills up, it goes but if the pond were to ever fill to the top, there's, the frame and grate that's on top of that standpipe is still lower than the berm that's around the pond, and therefore, if the water filled up that high, the overflow is an emergency spillway, so.
Okay.
Christine?
Looking at this large impervious surface area, so is all that roadway going to be graded towards this detention pond?
So yes, it's designed so that the entire road surface goes either a sheet flow across the site, or it goes through culvert pipe to the detention pond. And the road is all curbed, so it's all collected within the road and sent to the drainage measures.
So nothing, like, I'm looking on the wetland side, nothing will,
So that has drains in the ground and then the pipes run underneath,
Oh.
right?
Yeah,
So it's, so the back, obviously,
Gotcha.
we're not taking the water and making a big circle, so the back would be,
Okay.
Yeah.
it's not exactly like this, right? It'll be pitched,
Okay.
hit
And
pipe,
then-
pipe under the building into that.
Yeah, and
Gotcha, I
the
gotcha.
roof of the building is also plumbed into the drainage basin, so the runoff that's
Okay.
collects on the roof all goes into that detention pond. It's forced into it.
So you did get a number from your guy, I think.
Did
Yeah, Joe's got the number and,
he send back to me? Wait a minute. He
Joe,
says,
do you have some idea of what the inches of rain are in the 2-year calculation?
4 inches is my recollection.
4
And-
inches?
And Nick says that pond handles 50,000 cubic feet of water.
So that's 1 inch on 12 inches on 1 acre.
Somewhere in that.
50,000 cubic feet, let's say an acre is 40,000.
yeah, so if you had a foot of standing water on an entire acre, we still have
Right.
another 6,000. So you can do, yeah, so it's more than that.
Well, you've got 5 acres with 4 inches is a fair amount. Okay. Going once,
Can I
going
ask
twice.
Last
Yes,
question. You mentioned that you had some breaks in the, the lower shrubs near the stormwater pond and in the southeast corner, but there are parking spots along there, so I guess I would be concerned that if those people were parked there, the plow driver might just push it back to this north side somewhere.
so like
I know
always-
there's shrubs there, but,
So in all of our buildings, we have systems where, we kind of just clear we just clear the roadway, kind of, once it gets to a certain point, if it's a smaller storm, once the storm is done, every resident gets a message through the portal, they move cars, we do final cleans. So we're certainly not doing final cleans or moving snow around while the tenants are parked. And that's any building, any multifamily building, right? We're in the city a lot as well in Lowell, so they always move when we do a final clean. We keep it safe during the storm. Second it stops, take a quick spin, move to one side, right, like a condo association.
if you're cleaning the roadway and those two access areas for putting the snow,
Yeah, so it would just be
where's
pushed
that
around.
not gonna go?
Correct. I mean, we're certainly making, just like anything, when they do a road originally, there's snowbanks. And then we shovel through them, and then we move the snow properly.
And I think we have 4 or 5 extra parking spaces above what the ordinance says. So, if that's the snow storage area, I'm sure we could do something like striping or something that people know during the storm event, don't park in those spaces
Yeah,
because.
Yeah, correct. Yeah, I mean, once we get into it, we always kind of make plans on the simplest way. Makes our crew easier as well. So again, what Joe said, there's 4 or 5 above, and we never, ever have a full parking lot. So if we have 135 parking spots, there's always one car, there's always somebody that's not around. So yeah, I mean, we don't anticipate this lot being more than 80% full at any time.
Okay, thank you.
okay. All set? All right. Does anybody have any further reason to believe that our planting questions have not been answered? If not, does somebody want to make a motion to accept the planting plan?
Now, can I make a
You can.
suggestion? I'm not going to start talking about something else, but I guess it's kind of on Paul's conversation of, get approved and then come back. And I guess it's kind of probably where you were going to go is, if we wait that far and everybody else is already approved, right, and then kind of move backwards, it's just not usually the way things go, and to be honest, I don't know how that would work. I mean, can we do some form of contingent vote where it seems, because snow storage or I'm sorry, drainage is kind of on the same topic as the septic, where that's all going to be answered by Keach and by the state. Where, like we said at the last meeting, if we can vote on, listen, it's a beautiful project, you did a lot to get out of the dredge and fill, you did a lot for us, all this kind of stuff. Can we do some kind of contingent vote where, listen, if this passes,
Contingent with respect to what?
contingent regarding state and Keach approval, which is realistically the way the planning board approves
Are you
things as
asking
well.
us to approve the project?
So he's giving, right now, they're only on the planting part of it.
Gotcha.
Then he's gonna talk about more stuff. So,
Okay, so you got two all right.
Yeah,
Forget I said it.
right, it's just, he's learning,
I
he's
would
new.
assume that you would accept some of the suggestions from the board if you want to come back here and ask about a blessing on the project.
But again, I
Okay?
think the
As it
sticking
stands
point,
right now, you have our original answer to the project.
Correct.
Because there are many areas that are inconsistent with standards in conservation.
Okay.
And Karen stands by that as well as a lot of us, and have made that pretty clear. As far as the plantings, which is what was on the agenda, and what I tried to stay with, I think we can probably answer that question.
Fair enough.
And hearing some of the suggestions on other areas from the board, how you approach this project, and if you want us to approve the project, I would take some of the suggestions very seriously, if you want to come back again and ask that question. But right now,
No, understood.
I'm sure that there are many of us here that would prefer to see Mr. Keach's interpretation as well as the state, and it's out of our preview. We're only an advisory board. But we still would like to see you understand how concerned we are
No,
about
listen,
the project.
I think the fact of, again, not to go over it a million times, but how many times we've been back.
Yep.
And the.
Totally understand.
And the, I don't want to say compromises, but kind of what we've offered extra every single time, right? So I think that speaks for itself.
Working together,
Correct.
Can I
Hey,
say
listen.
okay?
Can I say something?
Certainly.
Okay, so if you go and get Keach on board, and you get your approvals from the state, and the planning board takes a look at your project and says, yeah, I think, whatever, you don't actually need anything else from us.
right,
Like,
That's kind of what I was,
Well-
but we're trying to offer anyways, you know?
well, we'll take anything
Oh, I know.
give us.
I know.
Absolutely, and even if we don't approve of the project, which we already sent our letter to say, and we voted against it, that doesn't mean we don't want it to be a good project. If planning says, oh, hey, this project's going through, we still want our say in like the plantings,
Oh,
or
listen,
the
that-
WCD, or this or
Hey,
that.
listen, it might get rid of my bargaining chip, but yeah, listen, we designed this building because we want a beautiful building, right? It wasn't purely, the plantings and the landscape is not purely to make you guys happy, right? I mean, we want a nice
No,
project.
no, of
We want a nice
course,
project
of
as well.
course, of
The
course.
mitigation is purely to make you happy, right? I'm just gonna be blunt because we've been talking so long.
And you like us so much now,
Well, listen,
right?
I enjoy
we're
it.
back.
Again, we wouldn't be back, right? If we didn't care about your opinion.
You
if
here
we
the
didn't-
rest of the week? Oh, no, go ahead.
Like I said, right, how many people come to conservation 5 times, right? It certainly doesn't happen in a lot of other towns that I've been dealing with. I mean,
Well,
again,
there-
we've been a lot and we've given every time. So, like I just said to Al as well, I mean, it speaks for itself that, listen, if we move forward and everybody says, okay, we're not gonna say, hey, Joe, clear the site. We don't need
Well, no,
conservation,
no,
right? That's not gonna happen.
And we understand that. But if you can get your approvals through the town engineer and the state and the planning board, you don't need to come back to us to say, gee, we want your approval too.
But we will check on the plantings.
But that's why I'm here now, and that's kind of why I was saying, can we do some kind of,
I understand.
because I want to give the mitigation, I do, because I want your approval if everybody else says yes. But if you say, we're not going to say yes, and then we go through and get everything else approved, we're certainly going to do the plantings, but what's the motivation to do the mitigation and the extra stuff that we did do strictly to
Okay.
help you?
Mediation I don't know about the rest of the board, but at this point, is probably a minor issue compared to all of the concerns we have about your affluents
Okay.
going into the wetlands.
Yeah, and those are state regulated, so that's like a black and white issue.
All I'm saying is absolutely.
Yeah.
And that's the biggest thing, and it's been the biggest thing, and putting 65 units on 5 acres, we all consider total lunacy. But I understand what the regulations say, I understand what your interpretations are. I don't necessarily think that they are correctly interpreted, but it does say what you say. And that's where it has to stand.
Fair enough.
Our position is advisory. We've advised you on the plantings, and I think you've done an outstanding job. I think you know the feelings of the members here, and I would like to see this progress. Only due to the fact it's on the agenda.
So let's, I agree with, I
I'd
agree
like
with you.
to get it done. There are other things that we have to talk about, and if someone would make a motion on the plantings, we could move forward. If not, that's where it is.
I'll make a motion that we approve the plantings, but we are not approving the mitigation, which I believe hasn't even been discussed. And we're not approving the project.
Which
Which
has
we
also
have
been
already
stated.
done, we've already
That's already
said
been,
that.
yeah, they already have that
I'm
letter.
just making sure the
Reiterating,
motion.
yes.
carries
I
out.
understand your motion, and
Because there's things about the mitigation, like it's got to be contiguous. Whatever we agree to, it's got to be contiguous. You can't have a quarter of an acre here and a quarter of an acre there. and a quarter of
No,
an
we,
acre-
No,
Paul, we wouldn't, but that's also why we came here now.
Okay.
To discuss that, but if we're tabling it,
Yeah.
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 No, our
And I
intention.
appreciate that.
You know
I mean,
where
we're
I'm-
trying to be,
yeah, yeah.
I know, we probably don't sound like we're trying to be fair.
work on Keach and
But
the
you did come
engineering.
back and say 2 acres of mitigation, that's at least a step in the right direction. But this is, so I'm just going to reiterate what I said.
So your motion
I'm
is?
making a motion to approve the plantings. This does not mean that we have approved the mitigation, at least for me. I want more mitigation. And it doesn't mean we're approving the plan. We're just approving the plantings.
Correct.
Second the motion.
Oh, any further discussion? I'd like to take a vote now. All those in favor of approving the plantings
The planting.
as put into motion by Paul Gagnon, seconded by Ken, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstain?
700.
Correct.
We done.
I think Christine raised her hand.
Can I say one, can I say one other
You
thing?
want, just to get it right, can't
Certainly.
Christine
No, I just-
abstain?
Well, there's
No.
9 of us,
No.
so,
7 members.
But
Yeah.
you've done some outstanding work.
All members are present.
so our job is to look out for the environmental aspect of this. So the state says this is the regulation and you go do what the regulation says. That means you follow their rules or town zoning rules or whatever. But we're looking out for environmental stuff.
Right. No, agreed.
That doesn't necessarily mean that the regulation written by the state is looking out for the environmental stuff. They're balancing certain things.
Correct.
They
It's-
have to
it's a
allow
balance.
some development with, some environmental stuff, this and that. Our job, we don't have to say, oh, well, we gotta allow some development. No, that's not where we're
I agree.
at. So I just wanna, we're only looking at the environmental stuff. And so, by you saying, well, we will give you maybe 2 acres or this and that,
Well,
it's
it's-
kinda like, I feel like I was extremely clear where I'm at on this. I need it all
Or nothing.
or whatever. I mean, I can't consent to less than, I've said it like a dozen times.
I was just
You
trying to
use
com-
the
I was
whole
trying to
lot.
compromise.
No,
We-
no,
we don't
no,
have
it's,
to.
Yeah.
and I get that, but you gotta understand where we're coming from.
No,
I feel like you used the lot, I've said this a dozen times.
Right,
You've
right,
used
right.
all the space on the lot for this building.
in that zone.
That stuff can't come back later on.
So do we
Yes.
ask every other homeowner, and this is kind of an issue I had in another town, where if you're gonna tell us to do something, so does every single landowner in the town of Pelham now have to say, what I have on my property, is it for eternity? No. So that's, I guess, that's my sticking
But
point
they
where,
don't have,
well, not everybody.
they haven't used it all, because let me tell
every-
you.
some people have.
This will be my position on every other person in town. If you already
We are very
used
strict
your
when it comes to
space, then yes, that's the position
Right.
I would be in.
That's what you, okay.
Which,
And again, that's.
you know, other people might say, oh, this looks good, or this'll work, or whatever,
No,
fine.
our position is, when it comes to WCD violations, I mean, we're very clear that, hey, there's a WCD, you should have known about it before you violated the WCD, and therefore, it's wrong. So, you're not any different when you come before
So,
us. than
yeah, you're
anybody
not-
else. You're not being
We're not-
singled out.
Okay, Ken.
Being mean to
Christine, you had
Oh,
one
and
more
I
thing?
just want to add, you know, just to be objective about it too, you know, in 2022, April 5th, this came out, the Pelham Build-Out Analysis Report from the Nashville Regional Planning Commission. It was interesting, and it's just a tool, it's not, fact, it's not what's going to happen, but it was interesting. It shows all the areas in the town that wherever you could build, where the future would look like, and then it eliminated all those areas where you couldn't build. And this lot, it eliminated completely because of the factors about it. So again, it's just another objective piece of data here that supports why we're concerned.
Al?
Thank you. Yes, sir. Dave?
I still have the concern, just like all the other board members do. I feel that this project, you're doing what we're asking, but I feel that, again, this project is too big for that little 5 acre, okay? I really feel that way, okay? And, you know, I asked some questions tonight about, you know, the filtrations and so forth. You know, that is another concern of mine. You know, I hear you talk about, okay, we're going to, you know, have 4 parking spaces where, you know, we're gonna pile snow, okay? Well, four parking spaces, if you think about it, that's not a real lot of space. I mean, you
Well,
take
we
a
never
look-
said we never said we were using 4 parking spaces to move snow.
That's
The
what I thought I
the
heard
retention
earlier.
pond, there was gonna be spaces available when they were asking where are we gonna push snow until cars move?
do have more
Is what we were discussing.
Okay, thank you
Okay.
very much, gentlemen.
All right, guys.
Thank you.
We've had a
Appreciate
vote.
the time. Thank you.
You know our feelings.
It's been lovely.
Have a good holiday.
As always, Joe.
Can you make it a little more sincere next time?
A little more sincere.
That was my sincere, yeah, that
That's
was.
as
Good as it gets.
Yeah, you got the good one.
Want to know a bad side?
I'm out. Have a good night,
Thank you.
guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, as we go forward, it has minutes and walk-ins. All right, just one note from the chair. There's a zoning board of adjustment site walk, Saturday, December 17th at 9 a.m. at the corner of Campbell Road and Gaston Street.
Could you,
Somebody wants to put in a garage and has no
space.
space.
No space, and they have to go to DES, and they have to get,
Well, they probably
And this
don't
gentleman
have
over here is answering it because he's on the ZBA.
to- Okay, what is the date? Saturday, December 17th at
9
9
a.m.
a.m.?
other permitting.
Yeah.
And then,
Karen.
okay.
Hopefully, we won't be out there in a monsoon like we were in the previous sidewalk.
It's horrifying, wasn't it?
We almost drowned. We learned about impervious surfaces and
Really
drainage
bad.
firsthand.
Okay.
Ken, you're going? You'll be there? Karen, you'll be there?
I will try to be there. When is that?
9 o'clock.
This
Oh, I
Saturday.
This Saturday.
cannot be there this,
I can't be there, I'm somewhere else.
I'll go.
I cannot be there.
Christine would be an outstanding representative, as well as Ken. Thank you.
I think we
But
got this
anybody can
notice
go.
in our
You
email.
just mentioned you
It's
would go.
public.
Any of us
You did.
can.
Well, Al got
It's
it.
also public,
Well, other
so
people
Yeah.
can go too.
the whole town
It's a
can go.
public, Yeah,
Yeah.
anybody can go.
Okay, all right.
And the
Okay.
The reason you guys got that was the fact that we, as Paul got me into this position, so that we have better alignment
Visibility.
between the ZBA and visibility between ourselves. Now, the thing that has to be careful about is if that should come before the Conservation Commission, there's an issue there with whether I could be a participant or not. So that
Well,
was,
you can
We have
recuse.
alternates.
yeah, I'm just letting everybody know, so just
Yeah.
heads up.
Okay, let's go around for walk-in so we can get to Karen's minutes and Paul's non-public. Yes, did you have something, Christine?
I actually do. Dave Bear's lovely wife, Kim, reached out to me because, and I think Paul may be aware of this, they wanted to put I guess an issue's come up, and it's come up quite a few times, that the seniors would like to have some kind of path. There's no sidewalks for them. And so if they have an appointment or if they want to go to activities, oh, I'm so sorry. If they want to go to activities at the Hobbs Center,
Sidewalks?
there's no sidewalks.
Correct.
So Kim and Dave looked at the, can you hear?
You want me to take it from here?
Yeah, go ahead.
So anyway, what happened was, the Hobbs Center, Sarah at the Hobbs Center was talking about seeing if there was something we could do to put some sort of a path, trail, from the Hobbs Center over to the senior center, okay? And
Bob, send it to the senior center. Clarify, please.
Yeah, clarify. You mean,
You talking about the terraces?
Yes, yes. From
Where
the
you
Hobbs
and I
Center
walked.
through the woods. So I had Paul come over and we looked at it, and you can add a little bit to it too. We walked it, and there is a lot of wetland through there. And what we were,
Not only that, there's a homeless guy, but anyhow,
but what we were thinking is, what can we do to, either we work on putting sidewalks through, around the road, or we see if we can put some sort of a path through the woods so that the seniors could they could walk, back and forth from their home to the Hobbs Center.
let's share the responsibility. If you now go off the back end of the pickleball courts, I'm sure that the emergency room guys would let you walk through their parking lot. If you could, in any way, shape, or form, convince the town to put sidewalks on 11A, there's a nice walk that Paul and I had gone on from the end of the emergency medical facility, down past Beaver Brooks Extension Store, and right into the terraces lawn. So that would be a short sidewalk. When we cleared out the room for the pickleball courts, we intentionally arranged it in such a way that it was a very, very short walk, and it's open right there to the back of the parking lot.
Well, we did look at that, the way you're talking
Okay.
about it, okay? I got permission from Beaver, where the saddlery is,
Yeah.
okay? And Dawn did tell me that he's all for it. He'd just like us to know he would like to know what we want to do, so we would have to keep him up on what we're going to do. And then I went into that medical place.
Yep.
And I've tried and tried and tried to get somebody to call me back, and no luck. Nobody calls you back. I've gotten names, nobody calls you back. I mean, if somebody knows somebody that we could talk to, I know that you could put that trail right along that edge.
Are you gonna say behind that and come out on Beaver
Correct.
Brook?
Yes, absolutely. So it would come out behind Beaver, come
Yep.
up almost to the 111, okay? And then it would go back in the woods and go around the back, to the back of the
Terraces.
terraces. That's where you would put it in. And I
The only
think we could
place
do
you
a
need to be careful is the drainage of all of that wetlands. Goes through a culvert right
Correct.
there underneath 11A. And how you'd get across that could be a trail, or it could be near the road. It would be a great opportunity to start sidewalks in Pelham. Yes, sir.
Question. Is this an appropriate discussion for this group, or is this a discussion that should be brought forward to, let's say, the select board or the zoning board, rather than, I'm hearing this as some, I'll call it my words, backyard chatter as to what we might be able to do. But if this is really something that's a need for the town, shouldn't we go through the select board or the planning board or somebody, rather than just try to...
I agree with you there. I think the reason why I came here is originally we were looking at going through the woods, okay? Not around the back of those properties. It would go straight through the woods, and we would have to put bridges across there to get where we need,
Yeah.
where we
You'd have a
need to
problem
go.
with your WCD.
Yeah, I just get nervous when we start to talk about, it's great to create trails and all that stuff, that's not a problem, I'm for those kind of things, but there's a more proper way, safer way of doing things, and I just cringe when I hear, this is for the elderly, and we're gonna create another footpath for the elderly, and we're gonna walk them through a WCD or over a culvert or something. It just sounds like it's, like homebrew solution, as opposed to, if it's important to do, which I think it is, let's have someone go to the select board,
Selectmen.
bring it up and say, hey, guys, this is what we'd like to do, we'd like your support, and let's do it officially as opposed to,
No, I
other
agree
ways.
with you. I absolutely agree with you, and I'd be more than willing to do that, so that's what I'll do.
Okay, great, thank you. Any other walk-in issues, Ken?
Yeah, I have one. I talked to Mike about it. The question keeps coming up, and Mike says, well, send them to me, but I think it's the commission knows that. As we've brought people forward in front of the commission to talk about and present their views on OHRV, and that's what we're talking about here, I think it's important to kind of get a regular status update as to what's going on with the OHRV, and we do have a representative, Mike. You sit on that group. So I'd be looking for you to say, do you have any kind of an update? Has this thing gone into neutral? Is it in limbo? Has it gone away? And what's happening?
There is no update at this time. We haven't been together since September, and until a new meeting is drawn up with the chair, we'll reconvene at that point.
So that's the answer we officially give to the townspeople that are
Correct.
wanting to know what's going on here?
Yes.
Okay. So it's in the record, and that's the answer.
That is the answer.
There has been nothing proposed.
Karen, any walk-in?
I just wanted to know if everybody's getting emails that I'm sending, like, through the town.
Yep.
Because
I
Dave,
didn't
I
get
think, had...
I got emails this last round, so I got emails.
Did you get my agenda? 'Cause
Yes, I did get the agenda.
Did you get from me, or, because Al sent it out just kind of on an email?
No,
as
I got your
opposed to
agenda.
attached.
I get it both ways.
So why did you send that?
I got it both
Do you-
ways.
You just sent
Because
a
Dave
quick,
forgot the
like,
last meeting.
what's that?
Dave forgot the last meeting.
Yeah,
He
because
asked me to,
I don't think
he asked me to
got-
remind him.
Oh, okay, that's all it was? Because I saw you send that, and I said, oh
I
my
wanted to
God,
make
did
sure you was
somebody
here.
not get, somebody didn't get it, but
Everybody
is
got it,
everybody
Karen.
getting?
You're doing an outstanding job.
On the town email yet,
You don't have the town email?
haven't been on it.
She has to set it
Oh,
up.
I
She has
haven't
to
signed
go
it.
set it up
You
with
have to go
Brian.
set it
I
up.
haven't done what I need to do.
Brian.
Oh,
Yes,
okay.
Steve.
I
Brian.
haven't tried it. Because I always get my my regular email, so I haven't.
I'm kind of transitioning on to just the town for
noticed.
this. Yes, just for the,
Okay.
because, you know
So I'll
why?
make a note to do that tomorrow.
Yeah, you might be able to just on the phone, like, call on the phone, and I
I'll tell you,
couldn't tell you how to
I went in
set
with
it up, I
Brian, I
don't
gave him
remember.
my phone, I said, make it so, he did whatever he needed to do, and it works.
It worked great.
Yeah.
Right, you might be able to just.
Yeah, I'm sure I can.
Well, I can't remember how I did it, because it was a while ago, but, one of the reasons that we're doing it is because we're a public board, the town residents are entitled to see,
I
like,
see, yeah.
communications between us and stuff like that. So we're trying to, for a long time, for years, Lisa, you know, Paul, whatever, we were on the board for a long time, and we were always on our personal email, because it was easier, everybody knew it, and like, you know, Paul was the chairperson for a long time, and everybody in town had his email. Not the town email, they had his personal, so then we did, but now we're trying to like transition off, so that's the only reason, because
know.
you don't want to have to give your personal, if someone says, oh, hey, I want to know what was said or whatever, you don't want to have to give anything from your personal email to anybody, so. And I try to keep everybody kind of like, hey, can't talk about cases, you know, don't share the minute, the non-public minute, you know, like I try to be clear.
Non-approved.
Yeah, and the non-approved, well, people can come down and request to look at them, non-approved, but
They're
they don't get
non-approved.
posted. They don't post them until they're approved.
Okay.
So anyway, speaking of that,
Thank you, Karen.
oh, you still have.
Anybody
walk-in?
else with a walk-in?
I got a quick one.
Yes, sir.
Go ahead, ladies
Oh,
first.
thanks. I just wanted to say, I happened to pick this up out in the lobby, winter maintenance for homeowners, and it talks about what we've been talking about, cutting down on salt, like using a brine mixture on your driveway or walkway, and using kitty litter or a different, you know, an alternate de-icer, because once the salt gets into the ground, it gets into the water, and it's not mitigated. We were talking about, you know, that stormwater pond in that case, and, you know, what type of materials, will it pick up pollutants? It won't pick up salt. If I remember my basic chemistry, sands and soils pick up positive ions, right, but not the negative ones, which salt is. I think I have that right, I'm not sure. I just know that
Yeah,
salt,
you're going too deep,
salt is
Lisa.
very, back
It's
me
gonna
up
go
there,
through.
right? You know.
The salt's gonna go right through.
It goes right through, so no
Just-
matter what
yeah.
kind of filtration you have in these things, it
Sand
doesn't
is
take the
for
salts
particulate.
out.
Very, very dilutable.
Yeah.
Right,
Standard
so
particulate.
this is
Goes
a really nice
everywhere.
outreach, and I would like to give credit to whoever did it. I'm guessing maybe it was Dina.
Dina.
Hoffman, so thumbs up to Dina, because, for getting the word out on that.
Thank you.
Question on that same issue. Is calcium chloride better for the environment than salt or not?
I think if it's a
Calcium
chloride, it's a
versus
salt.
It is
sodium.
a salt, isn't it?
Yeah, right. If it's a salt,
It's a salt.
it's a salt.
Well,
whether
it's no better or worse.
Chloride, right. That's my understanding.
Good.
Yeah.
All right,
Thank you.
gentleman, Mike?
One, first off, the distribution list that we have for I don't know who created it, but I noticed that it does go to our personal emails as well as the town emails, which is convenient.
Oh, they
Oh,
put
it
it
does?
together.
Yeah, it does. If you hit DL Conservation, whatever
Right.
the link is, it goes to all of our emails.
Oh, I'm not hitting that, I'm hitting something else. It's just Conservation Commission.
Yeah, it's DL
DL.
Conservation. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So if you start typing it, it'll autofill.
Oh, okay.
It's this one at the bottom. Oh, it's not up there right now.
Yeah, It was on the bottom.
But it
Oh,
is on
It's
the
on
signal.
before the meeting
Yeah,
starts, I think. I
it's
don't know.
DL, Conservation Commission.
Right, and if
They set
somebody
it up as
fills
a
it out, it'll go to all of us.
Distribution list.
Oh, if someone else does it, but when
No,
I
no, but we
s-
can
No,
do
we
it
do
internally
it.
also.
You should only send it to that.
Oh, really?
Yep.
'Cause they
So you don't have to individually type out everybody's
No,
email
no, no, they
address.
have a Conservation Commission,
Which is not.
and I just grab it.
complete.
It's not working.
That
Is
does
that
not
the thing
work.
that's not working well?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah,
it's
it's
DL.
DL Conservation Commission.
Okay.
Okay.
Anything else?
I also have a question. So unfortunately, I wasn't at the last meeting. I had some personal things I had to take care of. But I did watch it a couple times, and I had asked with email if anybody received the, there was a list that was brought up about all the OHRV complaints that we've been getting since 2000 till 2022, and did anybody receive that list with all the names and phone numbers and
No, I
contact
didn't.
information?
But
I didn't see the
did send
list.
you something back.
Yeah, you said you were
Did
going to
get it
check.
Did you get that list that Deb was talking about? She said she gets it from someone.
There was a
Oh,
spreadsheet
no.
that she said,
Spreadsheet, yeah, I
been
requested
tracked
it. I
for-
requested it from her.
Oh, you
Okay.
haven't
But
got
that
it?
was just today, so.
Okay.
Oh,
or
okay.
Something like, yes.
well, I just think that information would be valuable.
Yeah.
Because if it's from 2000 to 2022, or if it's from 2019 to 20, there was a lot of
I got a
confusion.
little confused about the
Yeah.
dates too, so.
But that could help out a lot, because we could figure out what areas that we have issues with. We could talk to the people who are having problems. We can ask them why they're calling forestry and not fish and game in the fire department or the police department. So if anybody gets that information, if you could pass it along, that'd be great.
And you saw Deb's latest notice about Woolven with the ATV or whatever that got in there and tore up the trails and whatnot?
No.
I haven't seen
don't
that.
know if I saw that. Did you see it, Paul? You saw it?
Yes, there's been a pretty big machine going up and down the gas pipeline, but up until now, it was staying out of the trails on Woven, but unfortunately, last week, apparently it went down the little hill into Woven and then kicked some mud around, and I didn't see the results, but it went over a wetland because it was dry, because most of the wetlands are dry right now. And Deb organized, I don't know, 6 or 8 volunteers on Sunday, and then they put some brush in the wetlands to try to discourage people from driving through them, which, by the way, I had done twice, once with Charlie and once by myself, so I'm not sure it's going to discourage anybody. They just move them out of the way or drive over them. But there is a camera there, and I haven't heard as to whether the police saw who it was on camera, but they had to go right by the camera in order to do what they did. So I think Deb's pursuing that. I didn't pursue it.
And that's part of forestry?
Well, yes, part of the responsibility of the Forestry Committee is to manage the town forests, and Woven is a town forest. So
Okay.
when the trails get damaged, that's the Forestry Committee's responsibility, correct?
Okay, anything else? Okay, any corrections, additions, deletions to the minutes?
I had none.
You had one?
Had none.
Had none, okay. Anybody else having anything?
Don't think I did. If I did, I sent them to Karen a month ago.
Okay. All right, I would entertain a move to accept those meetings, minutes.
Second?
Who said first? Who-
Must have been
who-
Mike.
Mike did?
I guess.
And Ken seconded?
Seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? All those abstaining?
I will abstain.
Michael abstains.
Okay,
I'm
so
going to abstain too, because I haven't been checking my
Okay.
my town
Lisa.
email.
Okay, so
Two.
So I
5,
was wondering where they were.
0,
Two.
2,
Yep.
Mike and Lisa,
Correct.
okay.
Excellent.
All right, I would entertain a move to go to non-public,
Okay, so do you want me
because
to
that's the
say
last thing
that?
on your agenda.
Yeah, I gotta say that. I wish I had my other thing. All right, I'll make a motion to go into non-public to discuss land acquisitions, seal the minutes of non-public, and adjourn after non-public.
Second?
Second.
Dave? Okay. Meeting is adjourned.
Well, it will be after non-public. For sure. but
The public
Shut the
is
cam,